Hey, howdy. Hey, my brewing brothers and sisters.
Greetings, Cretans.
The original
Good to
Cretan
be here.
himself. Yeah,
Yep.
the hops that you feature, I'm not sure which hops those are. The cones appear to be head sized. That is
I
a
think they're
new
Columbus.
cultivar.
Yeah.
Columbus.
Yeah.
Your either your head is very small or the hops are very large. Not quite
Very
sure.
large hops. An exclusive farm that has since burned down in the Oregon fires
Yes.
from 2012, I think it
So
was.
you can no longer get these hops. You're saying the
Yeah.
rhizomes may be buried under the ground somewhere, burnt beyond recognition, but
Beyond recognition.
somebody
Yeah.
somebody could
Only
extract,
photograph for posterity.
photographic evidence shows that you would need one hop to hop a 5 gallon batch. Yes.
Right. Right. Or two for your beers. Yes.
Mm. Right. If you're gonna go hobby,
Yeah.
you definitely want to do that.
Mhm.
You know who
Uh,
enjoys a hoppy beer?
I would imagine it would be our good friend John Blickman.
You would not be mistaken.
Ah,
Mr.
okay.
John Blickman enjoys a hoppy beer. He enjoys a malty beer. He enjoys all beers as long as they're well made. And one of the ways you can make great beer is using some Blickman engineering equipment.
All right. Like
He
his new grain
has,
mill.
oh, yeah, the new grain mill. It is what, 12 pounds a minute, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It'll really put it through.
60
Uh,
pound hopper.
Yeah, yeah. You know, capable of doing some serious homebrew, or if you've got a small nano brewery, microbrewery, that's a mill that can really push it through, and is below $1,000. You know, you get a mill for a small brewery. In the past, you're talking 6 grand,
Wow.
plus. If he's got the price down there, and knowing John Blickman, it's gonna be quality gear, gonna make your
Yep.
brew day better. So check it out, blickmanengineering.com. If you get a chance, I would appreciate if you could email my good friend John Blickman at feedback@blickmanengineering.com and tell him how much you appreciate that he's paid for the show so you get to listen to it for free. All right. Today, we're talking with my dear friend, Mr. Travis Combel. He is a award-winning home brewer. He is a brilliant engineer. He's actually helped me on some of my engineering problems, and also one of my best friends. And it is his birthday today.
Ah, no wonder he looks so old.
It was the one day killed me.
Oh,
Right. He's one day older, and that's what's done him in.
very
Good
good.
afternoon.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Travis, for joining us. So Travis is also a main member of the Cane Island Ailers, the CIA out there, Houston and Houston adjacent, right?
Yeah, just out mostly west side of Houston's where we're kind of located, but the members are across Houston area to a degree. There's several clubs, and people kind of slide around, and there's maybe some things that happen there that you know, I'm with this club now. That's good for me. These guys are great.
Yeah, and you guys, seem fairly well organized and have won a number of awards, larger awards in the area as well.
Yeah, it's a highly competitive club if you want to be, and if you just want to hang out and have some beers, is that too. Like every other club.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and I think John and I mean, me
Yeah,
and
we
JC from Trillium and Jason from True Symmetry, and we've done a lot of Zoom meetings with your club.
Yeah, Matt, my friend Matt. We have several Matts, but Matt Harold. He coordinated that for sure, and he really brought some great talent, including you guys and Peter, who I think is in the chat right now, to come hang out with us and really give us some great information on brewing beer.
yeah, it was fun hanging out with your club. So I always enjoy doing that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. Good folks. They know how to do a meeting and not talk all over each other.
Yep.
Some of these meetings we do, there's just like a ton of noise and you can't really talk to anybody at all. So it gets to be a little frustrating. But so one of the things about Travis, we actually have. So I'll tell you at Heretic. I got a malt silo. It was probably 8 years ago, or maybe 7 or 6 years ago. Got a malt silo, and the question is, how do you measure the malt that's coming in from the malt silo? So I went on eBay. I got myself like an indicator, what they call an indicator, that weighs things, and has the inputs for all this. And then I got myself some load cells, a summing box, and then I got myself a box to mount all the switches and relays. And I got to the point where it was like, well, I know all this will work. It's just like I'm too tired and dumb to actually make it work. So Travis actually flew out to Fairfield, spent a week with us, and literally built the box while I sat there and drank. And he learned the programming language that the GSC indicator used. And I want to say, not that I couldn't have done it. I was just too old, weak, and feeble to actually get it done. And so my dear friend, he came out and did it for me. And he put this all together. And what happens is my guys go to the indicator and they type in the amount of pounds they want, and they hit start, and it starts up in an appropriate sequence with delays. It'll start up the mill. It'll start up the dust collector. It'll start up what else do we have that goes up there? The mill and dust collector and the
auger.
The auger, but what is there another fourth thing? The auger, and so it'll start, everything's running in the correct sequence, and then predictively stop, and we end up with pretty much exactly within a half a pound, the appropriate amount of malt milled into our grist case, and then it stops the auger. Then it lets the mill run for a few more minutes to just make sure that there's no grain stuck in the mill. Because if you leave grain in the mill and you try and start up again, it's stuck. It won't start. And then the dust collector runs for a while longer and all this stuff, and then it does its shutdown. This thing's been running for 7 years flawlessly to this day, and we have named it the Travis. There's some acronym that I came up with, so it says Travis on the thing, and that thing's used just about every day. I appreciate it, brother, that you came and did that. And like I said, he's a brilliant engineer. He does a lot of stuff in the gas and oil industry, and does things that are beyond my brain power to really comprehend.
Nice.
So, and we have the commonality in brewing. We actually met, and people have heard me talk about you on the show, Travis. And so I thought it would be cool to have you on so people could know the Travis that I'm talking about all the time. So I'm like, well, Travis and I were doing this, and Travis and I were traveling. We were in a pub in England, and we actually met in San Diego at the Homebrewers conference. We were at the Toronado in San Diego, and we sat down. I was there with Peter Simons, and he and I were there. Peter Simons was proceeding to drink 4 pints of Pliny in 30 minutes, 45 minutes, to where I pretty much had to carry him out. But he was sitting right next. I was sitting next to Peter. Peter was sitting next to you, and you were sitting next to your wife. And at some point, he started talking to you about homebrewing, and then he introduced us, and we've been friends ever since.
It was a great day.
It was fun.
I love hearing the story. I'm not sure how much Peter loves hearing the story, but I love hearing the story.
It probably reminds him. Well, and let me digress. So I was with Peter another time, and we were in San Francisco. I'm not sure what was going on or why we're in San Francisco. We're in San Francisco. We're at the Rogue Ale House in San Francisco. And we're sitting at the bar, and I think he had just gotten off his flight from Australia. He came in, and we're there, and we're having pints, and we're chatting. Everything's cool. And then at some point, all of a sudden, he just tips over backwards. Boom. On the ground on a stool. Just falls like out of the sky, flat on his back. And we're all like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm fine. We're like, "Oh, did you hit your head?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm fine." And then he's like, "I'm gonna go to the bathroom." And we're like, "Oh, okay," and we're a little concerned. He goes to the bathroom, and then he's gone. And I'm like, "Uh-oh, maybe he passed out and he's dead in the bathroom." Go to the bathroom. I check, and he's not in there. Like the window's open. He slipped out and disappeared. I don't know. I think he went back to his hotel. He was awfully tired and awfully drunk at that point. And I think I got stuck with a bill. I think he still owes me to this day for quite a hefty bill at the Rogue Ale House in San Francisco. He's shocked that up. Travis has never left me stuck with a bill. He's actually too generous when we travel. Let's do this. Let's take a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk to Travis about how you brew award-winning beers in the hot, sweaty armpit that is Houston. Right after this.
Sounds good.
All right, we're back. We're talking with Travis Combel. He is a brilliant engineering mind and award-winning brewer and member of the Keene Island Ailers. Lives out in Houston. One of the things about Houston is, and we've talked about this, Travis, it's humid, it's hot, especially in the summer months. How does that affect your brewing? And there's a lot of home brewers that, they've got ideal water, they've got ideal temperatures. Those are the places where like all the Germans settled to brew beer, and Texas is not one of those places. But a vast number of people in the U.S. live in those regions, the southern United States, and they're dealing with harder water, hotter temperatures. What are some of the things you've done to cope with this?
Well, on the basis of just temperature, it's something you don't want to brew your first brew of the year in August. I take it doesn't make sense. Jamil's saying I'm brilliant. Here's where I'm stupid. I take off in December. I don't brew in December for some reason, kind of because of the holidays. That's the time I should be brewing. So I crank back up in January, and every 2 to 3 weeks I keep brewing and drink water because in the garage it gets really, really warm. I couldn't imagine doing it in sunlight. Some of our other brewers, believe it or not, have nice air conditioned garages. That's something I would love to have. I don't have that at the moment. But yeah, with the heat, you've got to get used to it, I would say. And I start early. I start at 6 a.m. with hot water already.
Yeah, when I was brewing at home, I would not brew in the summer. I would start brewing in the fall around football time, and I'd brew through the winter. Of course, I'm in California, and then I would quit about spring, and I would stop from May, June through
September.
September, and because it was just hot and it was a giant pain in the butt. But you don't get that much of a choice in Houston. How do you protect, especially things like ingredients? Malt goes slack when you provided a lot of humidity and heat. Are you storing your grain? How are you handling your grains? Are you just buying it, one at a time? Are you buying like by the sack and you're storing it somehow? How are you coping with that?
Right now, I am buying it by the sack, and I have dog food bins that say that they're airtight, I don't dump. There's some really nice containers you can get. I like them, but I won't use them.
The
Where they got
the gamma bins or whatever they are.
screw off lid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't use that. I keep it wrapped in the sack, in the container, lid closed all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It says it's airtight. It's at least air reduced.
Mm-hmm.
So far, no problems.
Mm-hmm.
And if I do have a problem, it'll happen in a few months here, because right now I have about 4 different sacks of base malt. And as I cycle through that, then I'll find out just how airtight these bins are. So I might learn my lesson come January when I start brewing.
Do you taste the malt and check if it's crunchy and fresh tasting, or or it's slack or something like that?
I do. I mean, I taste all my malts. I taste almost everything that goes into the beer. Unlike your buddy at Device who says he tastes the yeast, I don't taste the yeast if I can help it. but I taste the malts because I love it and it's delicious, right? I mean, I guess if I didn't brew, I'd probably just make cereal out of it. But I do, and I haven't run into the problem yet.
Right.
A lot of times I'll buy just by the batch, but lately I've been buying by the sack.
Mm-hmm.
Except for specialty malts. I don't stock up on like Crystal 40 and sit on that for a year.
Right,
I'll buy that a couple pounds at a time.
Right. Pete Talbot is saying, I met Travis with Jamil in London, Brixton, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Great guy to chat with. Hi, Travis. Hope you're well.
Hey, Pete, that would have been the little brew pub with a nice couple barrel kit.
I don't know, Pete. Maybe you can elaborate. I mean, we had, so Travis and I have traveled extensively around England, and we did a bit of Wales as well.
Heard that about you. Yes.
There was one night at the Casbury, the Homebrew Club. Why am I drawing a blank here?
Was that Sean's brewery upstairs where they had the London
Yes.
Amateur Brewers?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It is. Why am I drawing a blank?
Yeah, he's got a London Brew Lab.
No, not well. London Brew Lab would be a different one.
Yeah.
But it was at why am I drawing a blank?
Beer?
Right. Starts with an S.
I know. Yeah.
The place Sean was brewing at the time?
Yeah. What's the name of the brewery?
That's at least 2 breweries back for him. Yeah, you did the collab. You did the black.
Yeah.
Might have been a black
Buffalo.
IPA. Are we getting to the point where I missed the chair getting into the taxi? Is that what you're going to tease me about, or was it some other part of the story?
Let's see if I can Google this.
Sean was on earlier. He might speak up. And sorry, Pete. Yeah, I know what you're talking about, the Brew Lab.
Why? Oh my God! It's one of my favorite breweries. I think
Sam something's.
Sam something? Sam Smith?
No. Oh my God! What is the matter?
Shut down my browser so I don't.
I am so old. This is the problem.
That was when he actually was brewing his bitter with 001, and it was one of my top 2 bitters that trip.
Yes.
Sam Brooks.
Sam Brooks. Yes. Thank God. No, they won like GBBF for like the a bitter, and it was just while Sean was there, it was absolutely Sean Knight. It's absolutely stunningly good. It was all the beers were just so wonderful. Sean's an extremely talented brewer, and he went on to 4 Pure, and I'm not sure where he's at now. I think he's still at 4 Pure, but wonderful guy. We had the most amazing time at Sam Brooks, and everywhere we went in England. Wales was amazing. York was amazing. Bristol was amazing. Just a wonderful time. And then you decided to go have children. That's what screwed the whole thing.
Yeah, and I'm for better or for worse, I'm starting late, but just starting.
You're still young. You're young, my son. You're not old like me. I'm old enough to be your father. You know that, Luke? I could be your father.
Indeed.
I don't think so. We'll be glad you're not.
Yeah.
So Pete was at Sandbrook's that night at the London, or he said London Brew Lab. That was the place. Now my geography's bad. That was when you hosted the brew night. They had like 10 Braumeister kind of.
Oh
six.
yeah, right. That was a hoot too.
Yeah, I ended up doing the barley wine on the big kit while everybody else was doing something else in the smaller kit. I think that was London Brew Lab.
Right.
And
Okay.
Yes.
Pete's about 5 minutes behind on Facebook. So about 5 minutes, he's going to tell us things we should have known 5 minutes ago.
Well, and did you go with me you went with me to Mondo, and we did the pint night at Mondo, which was a blast too.
Yeah,
and then we also went to King's something or other.
Now you stumped me. Mondo, I remember, his kit looks like a spaceship. And it's like a push button. And it does a batch sparge, believe it or not, right? And it's a check kit.
Right. And
Sean was there that night.
No, there was the one where the cab wouldn't let you into they didn't want to let you into the taxi. That was after the King's whatever it was. They were like, no, not that guy. He's gonna throw up in the. I'm like, no, he won't. I promise you. He's like,
That's been decades.
because if we didn't get that taxi, we were screwed. Because none of the public transit was running. We were out in the middle of nowhere. We tend to be out late and drinking. I don't know how that works, but I blame it on Travis. I'm
a bad influence. Yeah.
Well, all right.
I remember Denver and a few others. Yeah.
Okay. So both of you, let's get totally distracted here and not talk about what we're going to talk about. Both of you have traveled with me in beer-related ways, and we've gone on beer trips together, John, Travis, and you've both spent this time with me. What would you say it is like to travel with me? What is the horrible thing that people should know about traveling with me?
Hot and sweaty.
Hot and sweaty. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Y'all must have shared a room. I had my own.
Always have your own room. There's a tip.
Yeah. And of course, Jamil, you are a big horror movie fan. So there's always some, chainsaw massacre going on in the background, trying to do a Zoom meeting or something. You've got that.
What's a chainsaw for? Yeah. Never mind that. Yeah. I think I can be a joy to be with. And I can be a pain in the ass to be with. I think, when I'm tired and frustrated, I'll be tired and frustrated.
Yeah. You and I had a great time in Singapore, but that was a very hot and humid trip. We find us walking around the city, 105
trying to air our nuts out on the, swing side to side, get a little air on each side before it sticks and tears. Yeah. That was rough. Yes. Singapore was a blast though.
Oh yeah. Yeah. The beers and the people are great. It was a really good time, but man, the weather is just, it's a real step up for us poor Southern Californian people.
That same year in Korea, it was worse.
Oh, right.
10 degrees worse in Korea. It was, and everyone was telling us how bad it would be in Singapore. I'm telling you, Korea people were like crying in the streets because it was so hot.
Yeah.
And we got to Singapore, we're like, this is not so bad. That was a blast. Anissa was there. Travis has traveled with me and Anissa as well.
Yeah.
She's a trooper.
Indeed. Yeah.
All right. Now that I've burned through a lot of time reminiscing and having fun, let's do this. Let's take one more short break, and when we come back, more of Travis, and we'll get into his award-winning techniques right after this. All right, we're back. We are talking with Travis Combel from the Cane Island Ailers, and he is one of their most award-winning brewers. And he has a lot of tips for folks that brew in a sweaty latitude, like Houston is, and near the ocean, all that stuff, and
frequently underwater.
Underwater, yeah. Right? Well, not like our friends at Brew Chatter up near Reno. The Brew Chatter folks, brewchatter.com, RJ and Josh, a couple of my favorite people in the homebrew industry. They are wonderful. They're kind, smart, funny people that have a passion for providing their customers with the best. You should check them out, brewchatter.com. If you get a chance, email them customer service at brewchatter.com. Tell them Jamil sent you, and that you appreciate that they've helped paid for the show. So brewchatter.com. They got all sorts of good stuff, and they could probably even help you with advice for solving the sweaty brewer problem. Travis, so you brewed a number of award-winning beers, and you didn't start out that way, right? So how did you improve your beers over time? What were your first beers like? And, how did you improve them, and how long did that take?
Yeah. So, shameless plug for you guys. I've listened to every show except for I'm behind at the moment. And, but yeah, I started off with kits of questionable quality. Even, how long did they sit on the shelf before I got them? How long did they sit on the shelf after I got them? And I was going to quit brewing, and I brewed with someone. I think it was a club brew, which I highly recommend that. Brew with someone else. Get the feel of all grain, et cetera, whatever you feel like doing. That was big for me to understand. Okay, I can actually make a decent beer, or at least I can learn to, because this guy is making good beer with a kit that's not that dissimilar from my kit. But fermentation, everything around fermentation. And at that point, I could drink my beer. And then I moved to Houston, and it really showed me how bad my water was. And it goes back to you two guys. Oh. And I did a light treatment on the water initially, and I've gone to more recently, I'm doing reverse osmosis and building it all up, and really cramming all that into just a couple of sentences. If you take those steps, you're on your way to making some really good beer. If you want to know about water, you guys have the Water Ganza, the Water Revisit, and probably a couple others thrown in there. And it's going to tell you way more than I could tell anyone about, or by the water book. And fermentation, almost every third or fourth show you guys have is, making it, sanitation, which is for fermentation purposes, temperature control, et cetera. And as you've often said, almost any recipe is going to at least taste good if you follow a good process to make it.
Right. Right.
So, I don't brew to style a lot, and that's not going to win a lot of awards, even if it's very tasty beer.
Right. Is that by choice or failure to
plan?
Sorry to disappoint you, Jamil, but it's sometimes it's by choice. I don't always want exactly that style of beer.
Right.
I want to tweak it a little bit. Like, many of my DIPAs, double IPAs, which is one of my favorite styles, I'm not going to use a West Coast hop, and I feel like I should if I want to compete.
Right.
If I expect to medal with that beer, it should be something reminiscent. That's changing, though, I think, for better or for worse.
Right.
But at least 3-4 years ago, you had to use the traditional American hop. Mm-hmm. If you were in place, but you might make a really good beer, but it's not necessarily what judges are looking for.
Right.
And
John, so one of the things that Travis brings up is his water and all that. And one of the things that I feel, correct me if I'm wrong, is that, this whole, latitude of the United States, going from, San Diego over to Florida and everything in between. do they tend to have a higher, mineral content water? I mean, Florida, it's limestone that the water's traveling through, and San Diego, the water is water that I've, pooed in and peed in, and it's flowed down the state, and it's, absorbed a lot of other crap, and, so it's been recycled so many times. That it's built up a lot of mineral content as well. I mean, is that true for anywhere that it tends to be hot and sweaty? Should you look at the water that way or no?
Well, yeah, you need to understand your water source, definitely. And there are two basic sources. You've got your surface waters, your rivers and lakes and reservoirs, and then you've got your groundwater. And North America as a whole, was, prehistorically was this inland sea covered in small shellfish and turned to limestone. So you've got these big limestone aquifers that we all draw from inland, states that are inland, without access to lakes and rivers. And so the groundwater there is going to be high in alkalinity, which, is a problem when you're trying to brew pale beers. Can't get your mash pH down, tend to have rough flavors in the beer as a result. If you're in a surface water area, and that's some areas of Florida, Georgia, like I say, surface water sources, then you're going to have very low mineral water, and you're going to have problems with your dark beers because you don't have the balancing alkalinity. Now, so that's your starting point, is understanding, do I have a high mineral water or low mineral water? And what does that mean to the styles that you can brew? And from there, that's when you start talking about adjustment. Surface waters, low mineral, you're going to add calcium, just a matter of course. And if you look at Papazian and Joy Homebrewing, he recommends adding gypsum. Colorado, they're working predominantly, well, I shouldn't say predominantly, a lot of the cities there are working with surface water, precipitation that comes down from the mountains. Reservoirs, you need to add calcium because it's low mineral. Elsewhere in the country, you may have sufficient calcium, but the water is high in alkalinity, and that's something that's got to be adjusted. So, from what Travis is saying, understanding that basic, decision point on how it affects the beers that you can brew well is a very important point.
Let's see. Peter Simons, who has also traveled quite extensively with me and the rest of us. He actually went to Fawcett's Malt with Travis and I. Oh. And he drove. We were in York, and we had somebody who was able to drive on the left-hand side, and that was Peter. And he drove us down in a rental car to Fawcett's, and we spent the day wandering around Fawcett's and then having Fawcett's provide us lunch at the local pub, and it was amazing. That was an amazing time.
Did you spend some time in the steeping tanks and so on?
Everywhere. He was like, well, what do you want to see? I'm like, everything. He's like, okay. So he spent like 3 hours out of his busy day wandering around. I walked out on the floor maltings on the malt. Nice. Yeah. And he showed me how to check the malt for whether it was done or not. It was one of the things that when you talk about bucket list, you check that one off. And then Peter says, I sleep cold. Yes. I like it like a meat locker. Peter knows that.
That's what he meant. Okay.
Yeah. Place has to be goddamn freezing for me to enjoy it.
I thought he meant your feet are cold, your hands are cold. I wasn't sure what he meant.
It's like laying next to a corpse.
When we were spooning, my behavior is a little cold. I'm just saying.
That's where my mind went. Sorry.
All right. Let's see. So that's how you improved your beers over time. But what made the biggest difference? If you had to identify it down to one thing that people should focus on to improve beers, to turn their beers from, average homebrew to award winning? What was that one thing?
I mean, are we assuming they have fermentation nailed? Because if not, it's fermentation. I mean, you got to pay attention to your sanitation and your fermentation. You won't make good beer with any good water if you don't have that. You might be lucky like Jamil and you have a great base water, but if you don't have your fermentation down, your beer's just not going to be good.
You're just saying I'm lucky. Is that what you're saying? I'm lucky. I have no skill here. Jesus Christ, throw me under the bus here.
You might be fortunate like Jamil to have very good water in your area. I apologize. Jamil, you picked that location for the water. I remember.
Picked the location because of the water. Yeah,
yes, I remember. Yeah. So you might be fortunate to have found a location. Yeah. Jamil, thanks for correcting me. I mean, you got to have your fermentation right. You got to understand the temperatures. You got to be able to finish your beers properly, and a sanitization to start off with. And your beer will taste good if you got your fermentation right, even if it's not the style. In competition wise, I go to my favorite resource, How to Brew, for a good reference on a recipe. And that's where I get in trouble though, Jamil, because what do I want it to taste like? And I start tweaking it, And that's why people in Justin, I think, is in the chat. That's why he beats me, because he doesn't tweak it as much as I do.
There you go. You always have to have your hand tweaking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pulling on it, twisting it. Now you've also done and you've sent me some of these beers, which I really enjoyed, some smash beers. So you have done some single malt, single hop beers, and you do that. Why?
Well, I guess really quickly, I ran through a handful of base malts and found out which one I liked for the style. But I really like to find out about the new hops. And some are new to me and they're not new to you guys. And some are new to you guys and not as new. Sometimes it's available homebrew level only and so forth. And I want to find out, well, what does this one taste like? What does that one taste like? And as a smash, I'll find out how it bitters, how it flavors, and how it does aroma. Because it's the only hop I'll use as long as it's got decent alpha acids in it. And, and the ones I sent you were my double IPAs. So they were homebrew calcs, 180, 190 IBUs.
Wow.
So you wouldn't do that because it's probably way more expensive than a CTZ. Who's going to waste?
I don't know that we would do 120 barrel batch. That's something like that. But I'm getting a 5-barrel brew plant out here, and we're going to be able to do 5 barrels of something, whatever crazy.
Well, and that's a whole lot more affordable. I mean, especially if you're going to buy 11 pounds, 22 pounds at a time of a hop, right?
Yeah. I'm cool with trying all sorts of different hops. It's just, once you brew it, you got to be able to get rid of the beer. And so when it's 5 or 10 gallons, that's pretty easy. When it's, 120 barrels, it starts to get difficult to get rid of that. Or even just 30 barrels, it ends up, you're trying to get rid of, nearly 1,000 gallons of beer. And, so that can be tricky through a tap room. So we, being able to do the 5-barrel, I think that'll be great.
That'd be nice.
Pete is asking, I'm brewing an American brown ale in an interbrew club competition soon. Each of us has a nominated beer to brew against a brewer in the club or against. He's not brewed an American brown. Can you recommend any of the specialty malts that would be good with this style?
Where is he located?
He does not say.
Well, he
was at I want to think.
No, he was at the Pete was at the Brew Lab.
Oh, that's right. He's in England. Okay. American brown. Okay. Right. So Pete, I think you're good with a lot of the British crystals. I would, if you're trying to do an American flavor, I would avoid the British base malts. you might go with more like a Pilsner or, if you can get American two-row is unique. Just like British Pale is unique, and German Pilsner is unique. The chocolate malts that you have there, England is a wonderland of specialty malts when it comes to crystal and toasted and roasted malts. So I would stick with those. So you're going to need some chocolate malts. You're going to need some crystal malts. But, as far as base malts, I would try and get something really clean and simple, light biscuit, grainy, not too grainy, not too biscuity malts like you get in the U.S. There is the Janet's Brown in the Brewing Classic Styles. I think that's a great way to go. How has that changed over the years, though?
I don't know. I mean, they split it up in 2015, right? Now you have American Brown and a Brown IPA. I'm not entirely convinced the Brown IPA exists, but I don't remember where they put Janet's.
Right.
Janet's was great for style before they split that out, for sure, though.
I would think you'd probably back off on the hops in Janet's, especially in England. England has, a number, and it's getting hoppier and more Americanized on a lot of those beers. But even still, a lot of them that you will find commercially and homebrewed do not have the intensity that a West Coast American Brown will have, or a Texas American Brown will have, which, interestingly enough, the style came from Texas. So I think judges in the UK may be a little off-put by something that is intensely hoppy. So I would try and give a little more balance towards the malt and the hops. So,
Janet's Brown recipe uses principally crystal and chocolate for the specialty malts. I think some amber malt is a good addition to give a little more of the biscuit character, more of the dry grain character. And I've had some, very good American browns that they are, I think American Brown as opposed to English Brown also has more of the dry malt character, not astringent, but just the more of the biscuit touches of and it's that drier character that roast can give you in low amounts.
I think there is some roast character, but I think you need a good layer of crystal malt.
Yeah, definitely.
To kind of balance it out. It's balanced. It's kind of sweet. A little bit of the chocolate malts will give you a bit of the roasty. If you compare it to a Sam Smith's, kind of nutty. It's got a bit of that chocolate roasty. I would take that and make it, more hoppy, a tiny bit, a cleaner yeast character, a touch more crystal and a touch more roast. It's American.
Yep. It's a robust.
More of each. It was, the genesis of this was, homebrewers in Texas, brewing, British brown ales and making them American and, a little bit more intense, and a little bit bigger and a little stronger. And then they got hoppier and it became a style. And that's where it comes from. That's kind of the history of it. So there you go. One good thing came from Texas. I'm just saying.
What do we know that's available to him in England?
Yeah. Oh, beers available?
No. So for the malts, I like you said, I mean, I don't know if you can get American two-row in England.
Should be able to.
Oh, I don't know. It's tough.
I saw the other day. I haven't seen it in person, but someone had a Maris, a Golden Promise Light. Now, I haven't brewed with it. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but I'm wondering how close that might be to the right profile.
I haven't tried it. They've got some basic, like European continental 2-row malt. It's not quite, Pilsner. It's just a light color pale. So sometimes extra pale will work, meaning that it's not as pale aled as, something you might find at like Thomas Fawcett's or wherever. All right. Let's see. Here's a question for you. I've tasted your beers. I tasted your beers years ago. I've tasted your Dirty Diaper. I've tasted other beers. And I've tasted your beers recently. As a self-measure, how far do you think you have to go as far as improving as a brewer?
Considerable. Considerable. I mean, I'm happy with a lot of beers, and I'm not happy with at least as many beers as I'm happy with. And now I've got to keep doing the process. Got to keep tweaking. Got to keep listening to you guys. Got to keep referring back to the water book and trying to get the balance right. Last competition I entered, I think my average score was 36. I'd like it to be 40 plus. Mm-hmm. I was
What areas are you focusing on most currently?
Right now, I'm focusing on packaging.
Packaging, right?
Yeah,
right.
I got some feedback that it doesn't show up as well as it sends off. Mm-hmm. Getting some oxidation comments back, and which I think I'm just being cheap with the CO2. It's part of it because I didn't used to get so many of those comments as I'm getting right now.
Packaging is critical. You can make the best beer in the world, but if you package it poorly, the result's going to be poor beer. So, you're somebody who's won a number of awards, but, even brewing it well, if you're not packaging it well, then, it's going to be a lesser beer than what you were intended, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. How do you typically package your beers? I mean, beer gun.
Blickman beer gun original. I think not the new version for sure. I don't know if we had a predecessor to the version 1.
No.
But yeah, do that hooked up, and even that somehow has changed because I used to create crazy foam when I did it. And now I don't, and I wonder if I can trust any of my pressure gauges.
Oh, well, that could be the issue. I just bought a new regulator for my CO2 system. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm overdue. Thanks for reminding me.
Pete was saying the malt miller in the UK has most of the grains and hops that you would need to make American brown ale.
Okay.
Cool.
Check them
yeah,
out.
I was looking at one of the homebrew supply shops there, and they have Brees Victory Malt, which is that amber malt. Mm-hmm. They've got some of the toasted or the roasted wheat malts like the Black Prince. A touch of that can add a nice roast, yet not a stringent character. Give it that edge, that brown edge to it.
So Travis, you and I have traveled together. You've done some other beer travel. I mean, you lived in Belgium while you were working as an engineer over there. Do you feel that beer travel is a benefit to your brewing, or is it just a nice thing to round out your beer knowledge, or neither?
To me, it's an absolute benefit. I don't know that everyone else needs it, but I can't imagine brewing a beer that I have never had a good version of. I can't imagine trying to do a British style and never having had a bitter on cask.
Mm-hmm.
It is a little disappointing because it's hard to create that effect that you get in the brew pub, But yeah, absolutely. Having the beers at the source. I didn't appreciate a German Pils until I had a bunch of them, and they are excellent beers, you know. English bitter, I've never had anything in the USA, I would say, other than the bitter you sent me, Jamil, that even approached what you actually get in a pub in England. It's just, if you have a style and you think the style is not good, you probably haven't had the style at the source, because the people there probably are not drinking bad beer.
Right. You know? No, nobody wants to drink bad beer.
Right.
Every style that, you know, became a style, it became a style because people locally were like, oh man, this is really good. And, you know, it lasted for 100 years or whatever it would be.
Right.
Or 10 years in New England terms, you know.
Yeah, 5. Yeah.
It'll last 100 years. Trust me. Yeah. All right. I see that the clock is up upon us, so let's take one more break, and when we come back, we will talk more award-winning brewing with Travis Combel right after this. All right, we're back. My good friend Travis, along with my good friend John Palmer, we're talking Travis's. So yeah, I mean, Travis, you know, when you first, how long was it when you first started brewing? How many batches did you brew? And, you know, how many entries did you have before you won your first medal in competition?
Okay, so I was brewing probably monthly for, let's call it 4 years, and enjoying my beer. And I was living in New Orleans, and the club I was in, there was no competition spirit or mentality, or I mean, I don't even recall the club didn't have anything other than maybe bring your beer to each one. So it wasn't a thing. And then I moved to Europe for a year, and couldn't believe that the thing I missed the most was brewing and you guys. And like, as soon as I came home, I knew I was going to move to Texas, and I was actually doing some work in Texas. And I guess I started noticing the competitions as I started reaching out to the Texas homebrew clubs prior to moving. And believe it or not, it was a very small event, but the first competition I ever entered in, I took 2 medals. One was by default, and one was actually a good beer.
So your entry 1 of 1?
It was it was 3 of 4.
Nice.
Literally, and that IPA, I was hoping to get advice on. You eventually gave me advice on that IPA, and it's come a whole long way. That was the 2 bitter days, is before I was fixing my water days. But
here's one thing I remember was I was in New Orleans for some software thing, I think it was, and I went to, it was a Gordon Biersch, and every beer on that Gordon Biersch was spectacular. Whoever was brewing at the Gordon Biersch at the time, oh my God, they knew exactly what they were doing. Out of this world good. And some people were gathered at a table behind me, and they were talking about brewing, and I had to get up from my seat at the bar. I turned around and said, excuse me, are you guys like brewers? I hear you talking about brewing. They're like, oh yeah. And so we started talking, and I specifically remember one guy was just like, we were talking about, you know, where you know, things that you learn and where you learn information and all this. And one guy was like, you know, I've been brewing for 5 years, and there's nothing anyone can tell me about brewing that I don't already know. I know everything. I don't listen to podcasts. I don't, you know, read books. It's like, I know everything about brewing there is. Just like, this guy's an idiot.
wasn't me.
Right? No. And I think, you know, you and I talked about it later. Just like, yeah, there's people that, you know, they believe that there's nothing to learn, that they know it all, and they don't really care to hear any feedback or anything else. I think that was one of the things that kind of shocked me. You know, to be fair, the other folks in the club were very, you know, they were like, no. This is just like one old curmudgeon. The rest of us are trying hard to, be the best brewers in the world. But I mentioned it to you, you're like, yeah, I think I know who you're talking about. And I think, the point being that it really impacts the progress of a brewer, and you shifted clubs, and I think it accelerated your brewing capability, and it really moved you forward. A homebrew club is a wonderful thing and an important thing. This is one of the reasons that the AHA is important, because it actually encourages club participation. It's not just about the AHA. The AHA supports clubs, and being part of a good club makes you a better brewer.
Yep.
And you actually produce better beer by being supported and challenged by your club mates, like in the CIA, right, Travis?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. These guys, highly competitive, great guys to be around. It is a really good club, and they don't just want to beat other clubs; they want to beat each other. Everybody wants to make better beer, but really, and I hate to emphasize that, because it's not 100% that. Because a lot of people don't want to be in a club that all they're about is competing, and I guess there are clubs that are like that. And CIA is not that. Most clubs are not that. I mean, even if you don't want to compete, it's a great club to be in, because you should get to drink great beer made by other people.
Right.
Yeah, and learn from other people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but clubs going against clubs, or clubs going, it helps everybody rise. Rising tide floats all boats, and if you can improve everybody's brewing, and sometimes it's just a friendly little bit of competition, and clubs are great at fostering that. Hey, let's all try and be better. And it's not somebody's a loser, somebody's a winner, but hey, have we all learned something from this? And I think that's one of the great things. One thing before we go, I want to ask you, Travis, is, how are you sourcing your materials for award-winning beers? Do you find that there's different ways that, it's important to look at how you are sourcing your materials for your beers, and that's improved? Or are you just going to, whatever shop's available and buying whatever, they have? Or how do you do this? Because you've clearly improved your brewing and won medals, and important medals in competition. And I can't imagine that, the source materials are unimportant to you.
They're 100% important to me. I like to rely on a great local homebrew shop. They're not all great, unfortunately.
How do you tell the difference?
Well, if I walk in with my recipe and they say, I don't have this hop, but I have this one in stock today. It's my IPA, it's not their IPA. But I do a good job of communicating before I show up. If they're not going to have what I need, I'll source it, online if I have to. I'd rather give them my business locally. Then there was the homebrew shop who said, and we don't carry breeze because we don't like how their crystal malts taste. And I'm thinking, so you're not carrying the number one crystal malt manufacturer in the U.S. because it's your beer, not mine, but it's my beer. And if you're starting off, they may or may not know more than you know. They should know more than you know. But if you're dialing in your beer and you're brewing your beer, you got to use what you want in your beer and learn from that. If you're stuck, try what they're offering. But I've made this 5 times and I'm dialing it in, and you're telling me I've got to use that hop instead of this hop, that's not going to teach you what you want to know. Depending on the hop,
Yeah.
But their business supports our hobby, but our hobby supports their business. It's got to be symbiotic, It's probably different here than it is, well, anywhere. Everywhere is different. The number of homebrewers, the density of homebrewers. Some of the places have obviously been struggling, even before everywhere in the world was struggling. It's like It's like going to Ace or going to Home Depot. If I go to Ace, I'm going to go to Ace.
Mm-hmm.
If I can go to my local homebrew shop, I'm going to go to my local homebrew shop.
And that's the thing is you need to support your local homebrew shop or they won't exist. You know, if the local homebrew shop sucks, tell them they suck. Tell them what the problem is. You know, help them correct what they have. And the best homebrew shops, they'll be like, all right, you know, if you're not talking out of your butt, they will, you know, make some adjustments and they'll be like, okay, they're right. We need to carry this, or that's bad, or the way we do this is bad. Yeah, okay. And they'll adjust and they'll become a great homebrew shop. But they'll become a great homebrew shop with your interaction and your support, right?
Absolutely.
Very good.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Travis, for joining us and sharing your tales of you know, how you went from I'm saying beer to really fantastic beer. I had a couple of beers from you just recently that I thought they had some oxidation in packaging, but they were so good, so well brewed that I drank the whole thing. I'm like, oxidation be damned. It's an excellent beer. I really enjoyed those. So thank you so much for sending me those beers, for joining us today. Thank you very much to our dear sponsor, John Blickman at blickmanengineering.com. Send him an email, feedback at blickmanengineering.com. Tell him how much you appreciate that he is paid for the show so you don't have to. If you enjoy listening to this, the least you can do for me is sending him an email. I mean, it costs you nothing but a couple minutes to say, thank you, John, for Brew Strong, and send that out to him. And same for our folks at Brew Chatter. If you're ever out in Reno area, stop by. They got like beer, great beer available to you. So check them out. Thanks for everyone for participating live on Facebook. Peter Simons, Peter Talbot, Graham, Mike, everybody. Thanks for being there. We appreciate the support. Thanks, Travis. Thanks, everybody. Until next time, which is, I think, like a week from now. Oh, yeah. We'll have more for you. Brew strong, everyone.
Brew strong.